say, I think I would be very focused on the story of the brand right from day one, the reason for creating it, and really communicating that right from day one. People love a story. They love to know where something's come from. They like to know, how it all started. And I think rather than focusing on the product, which is what we did, I think people really needed to hear the story of Budeful and why it was created and who the creators were. So that would be number one. Number two, I would be a lot more focused on the product I was taking to market. I'd be a lot more Jeff Bezos. I'd be like, right, let's just do books. Or let's just do mugs. Or let's just do something and have it as a core focus product initially. And then let that grow, get known for that, and then introduce other things. And we've done it completely the other way around. We're a mini department store that people go, oh, look at all these wonderful things you've got, but we're not known for one thing.
Hello, it's Cowboy and Mark again with you here at BizUnLearned for episode 8. So we're moving right along here. And once again, a new guest. And this is going to be an interesting one, as always. All right. And so, Mark, do you want to kind of give us a lead in?
Yep. As per the view on the screen, this is Netty Wilson, and she'll tell you all about a little bit about Budeful, her business. But the reason she's on, BizUnLearned is because, speaking on your behalf, Netty, there's some BizUnLearned things that you've been through over the last, 3 years have we known each other now?
Yeah, at least 3 years, yeah.
It's been an interesting journey, hasn't it? And so that's why I wanted Netty to be on the call today, guys. And also because as a classic small business that's getting bigger and developing a following, it crosses massively into Bill's whole stuff around how are people like Netty going to implement those stages of growth. And particularly because she's in that business, that green business thing, that it's got eco stuff in it. And,
bunch of tree huggers.
It might have the odd tree hugger feel about it. But as Netty will tell you, she's a business person. So we see it as business. We don't see it as, it's not a charity. It's a business, Netty, is it? And it can be huge. So just give us a little BizUnLearned and we'll go from there, Netty Wilson.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me on the show, guys. And it's a pleasure to meet you as well, Bill. It's really nice to be on your podcast today. And a little bit about Budeful. Started about 5-6 years ago from a walk on the beach, just seeing all the waste washed up on the shoreline. And it was really a matter of how can we make a difference? How can we be part of the solution, not the problem? And traditionally, as we know, a lot of green businesses are much more about, and there's no knocking this at all, growing hemp and being extremely green. And, the two sort of don't go together, commerce and being sustainable and green. It's almost like the two things like oil and water. They don't quite mix. But actually, I think Budeful is a brand that is here to make a difference and prove that things can be different. You can still be ethical and sustainable and grow a business as well. So we work very closely with the UK supply chain and local artisans to produce our designs for us. And we try and be as ethical as we can be in that process. And as Mark has said, we've learned a few lessons along the way, how to do things and how not to do things. It's been a really interesting journey.
So there was 2 quick ones in there, Netty, because then we'll go in other directions. But the bit about the stuff on the beach at Bude, it was me that found the person that then you now work with.
Yep.
That turned them into the bracelet things. So whatever term Bill would use to call the stuff on the SHIT on the beach is now something that is selling and making a profit from. So that's the original part of your story, isn't it? But the reason I highlight that it was me that found those people at an event thing I went to, that's the second piece that you're very committed to through the community, which is the me and you collaborating and other people. And because that's me and Bill collaborating too, this whole thing about people are saying they want to collaborate, but we kind of know they don't know how, but equally so, they're being sold things that, oh, just do this because you've been there too, haven't you? So you got the T-shirt on this whole area, really. But Netty, because it's the starting point of a business, and it's not a place we normally get to go to, and it lets Bill kind of reference things that he'll reference in his mind. Just do that little bit, because you and I came in, and we won't mention the ex-business partner. We won't mention the ex-business partner. But when I first met you, and I was introduced through a networking guy again, so there's that introductions that work in the hands of people that are willing to do the work to make them work. So that bit worked. And then you and I ended up on phone calls that went quite late into the night, and you'd been up since. It's all right for me because I'm not an early starter, but you were up with the dogs at God knows
early
when.
bird, yeah.
But your then business partner was going to work and having his full day's pay, and you were the one putting the money in, putting the hours in with your life partner who's involved too. But the other shall remain nameless. Wants his money out, wants his share, wants his this, that, and the other. Now that he's gone, but the piece that a lot of people on this call really may not understand, just because 100% of shares divided by 2 equals 50 each, but then you're doing 96% of the work, putting all the money and everything else, that formula didn't work. And that's kind of where you and I came in the door, isn't it? Of extricating you from the headline deal that should never have been done in the first place. That, I mean, if you think, and millions of people told by, I won't slander any particular profession, but certain oh yeah, just do 50-50. And you go, well, there's a formula for doing this, just like there is for most things in business, whether it's me that knows them or Bill or people like us and the like. So just take us through that little piece of the early start of the business of kind of getting into bed with the wrong person, as it were.
Yeah, it was out of naivety, really. And I just think, not really being a creative, very full of ideas, as we were talking about earlier, just full of ideas, full of, expectations and real sort of naivete about how to really structure a business and what that really means and what it looks like, and kind of future proofing. Trying to set that up in the beginning was really, really sort of tough. It was almost like, right, okay, well, let's make it easy. Let's just do quickly 50-50, but not really doing a deep dive into what that meant. And then, of course, dynamics changed. I ended up, as you say, doing majority of the work and running the business and putting in most of the effort and time and money. And it really created a resentment. And it started to build. And then that in itself, when you start to have that resentment building, becomes a very destructive force in a business. It really takes you away from why you started it, the important values that you hold dear, and it takes your focus away from really what you need to be working on in a positive way to grow the business. And it became a huge distraction. So yeah, a huge lesson learned. Huge lesson learned, and one that I will never, ever get involved in ever again.
Well, I'm wondering, what was your business training and background before this?
I worked in the music industry, and I had been on tour, managed tours, worked as a booking agent, worked with promoters, worked in promotion of the bands that I was working with, scheduling. So I had got a background in planning, sort of, and working with other people. So, but it was more the sort of, I've had to learn business along the way. I really have. I'll hold my hand up and say, going into business was not something that I knew a huge amount about. It was just, I had a passion, I had a dream, and I had an idea. And having learned from a hell of a lot of mistakes along the way.
Did you know this person ahead of time?
Still going. Sorry?
Did you know this person ahead of time before you
it was a collaboration through both being creatives. So it was through a creative I've got the ideas, and I'm an illustrator, and can paint and draw, and it was somebody I needed to work on the sort of graphic side so we could put stuff into production. And it all worked. We had a lot of fun in the beginning, and then it started to really get down and drill down into the nitty-gritty of what business really means, and the commitment, the huge commitment it takes. And I don't think a lot of people are willing to put in that commitment. You've got to be really passionate, really driven. They're not willing to put the effort in.
Creatives are not known for business execution. They're just not. They often end up needing someone to manage them. I mean, from rock and roll bands to whatever. It was no different than the age-old story about Elvis when they were trying to get started and they were doing everything. And then it was finally like, no, you guys focus on the fucking music. I do the management. and that's the way it should be. I mean, I often say here and a lot of places, I'm a project manager. I'm no good without a fucking team. My girlfriend asked about putting something new together, and she's like, well, we need a guy for that. And I'm like, call this dude. Well, we need a guy for this. And I'm like, call him. Well, I need a guy for that too. And I'm like, call this dude. And he's like, how do you know all these people? Okay. I've been in the country for my whole life. You know them. And I'm like, you don't talk to anybody. but it takes a team to make a lot of things happen. It
does.
Really does.
And what you're saying there, Bill, actually is more about working on the business than in it. And I know this is a conversation Mark and I have had. I want to really, and I'm starting to get to the point now where I'm kind of zooming out and looking at what the business needs, with the support of Mark and as a sounding board, and working on some, things together, looking at how we can really sort of zoom out and really manage, be an outside looking in, rather than me being always involved in the day-to-day and I still have to, obviously, because I don't have the people to call at the moment to do a lot of this stuff, but eventually that would be my goal.
Just go back, Netty, this applies to both of you for different reasons. For you, Netty, as the business founder who went into that business for good reason with another creative, which was different to your skills, so there was a sense in it.
Yeah.
Let's look a little bit at, if the world was perfect, which it rarely is, but it can be smart, but we have to do the thinking first. If you could do that again, knowing what you know now, that's a little interesting area just to do a couple of minutes on for people to go, because they'll be in their situations or they're thinking about the whole startup, or as we call it, business design phase, because startups, they never become anything if you're not careful. But if you're in design phase to then launch, you're starting to cross a bit more to Bill's territory. And then Bill, let's hear what Netty says around what she would do if the world was a perfect place. And then see if we can get into, because the bit that me and Bill nicely dig into is, how do we make the stuff that's in his head, which is 30 years of experience, how do we make that available to people like you where, I'm going to start a business, I better call the Cowboy, or what do you do to get, because that stuff needs to go in early, not when we're trying to raise money or trying to scale up. The sooner it's in, the business will culturally operate that way. So, ideal world, if you had the crystal ball bit, which is a question I know we get into on our month-end reviews, looking back, what would you have done differently?
I have to say, I think I would be very focused on the story of the brand right from day one, the reason for creating it, and really communicating that right from day one. People love a story. They love to know where something's come from. They like to know, how it all started. And I think rather than focusing on the product, which is what we did, I think people really needed to hear the story of Budeful and why it was created and who the creators were. So that would be number one. Number two, I would be a lot more focused on the product I was taking to market. I'd be a lot more Jeff Bezos. I'd be like, right, let's just do books. Or let's just do mugs, or let's just do something and have it as a core focus product initially, and then let that grow, get known for that, and then introduce other things. And we've done it completely the other way around. We're a mini department store that people go, oh, look at all these wonderful things you've got, but we're not known for one thing. And I think that's what I would change.
And on the stuff with
that's
the partner?
Scope. One of the 3 triple constraints: scope, time, and resources. Yeah. So you're telling me that looking back, you failed at scope.
Yeah.
You know?
And I would do that completely differently. Spent a hell of a lot of money on having loads of different designs produced for mugs. And this was the particular person I was working with at the time. Oh, it's going to be much more cost effective if we buy all of these designs and have them sitting in the factory ready to draw down. No. No. So all that money is sitting there when it could be used to fund the business. And
a lesson that many people have learned from reading The Goal.
Yeah, see?
We should
known you back then.
He's referring to a particular book called The Goal, which is the story about they put new robots into the factory, but nothing, productivity doesn't go up because they didn't look at the effect. All they had was the robots sucked in more costs effectively in inventory and turned out more stuff in their bit of the factory. So they increased overhead, and everybody else, the other side of the robots, were pissed off with it because so they didn't look at it as a system. So that's where it's a book that Bill and I both have read, and it's a bit of a cult book, and it wasn't sold, was it? In hotels and things only, but it's very much linked to this subject. So Bill, on your side of it, in the ideal world, what could the Netties as business people setting up? What's the call 911 Cowboy in setting up? Well, before there's a problem, though, before the emergency, we want to get to them.
Well, I mean, if I was sitting in that situation, you're the founder, okay? If I was sitting in that situation and someone called me, the first thing I would do was grab my financial resource guy that I've known for over 20 years, who's finally left America just last week. And he's done SOX compliance all over the world. He sets up P cards and financial systems and, and shit like that. And he could, select the best financial structure and know the difference of whether or not you can switch between one or the other. Often you can, but you can only do it once. So these are things that you need to know. And so, he could tell you that if you start with this, you can switch to that later, that type of thing. And then, frankly, Mark, this comes back to the contracting piece. All right. If you brought in this other creative as a contractor and he wasn't doing shit, fuck off, pal. Get off my planet. and you wouldn't have had the problem that you had, because it would have been under contract, clearly defined. Yeah. That's exactly what I would have done, because you're the founder.
Yeah. Well, that I've now toughened up, I would say, in business, really toughened up. Mm-hmm. And Mark has seen my journey from being Little Miss People Pleaser to somebody who actually says, no, your email to me doesn't say my name. You haven't even bothered to find out who I am. You're cold calling me without any introduction. No, I'm not going to give people the time of day to talk to me unless they've got something that is really going to assist the growth of my business or is going to be beneficial in some way. And it can be a two-way collaborative relationship, but it actually has to have a meaning and it has to bring money to the table.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about that contractor concept?
Yeah.
I mean, Mark, we keep coming back to that, right?
Yeah. And our son's girlfriend yesterday, she works for one. It's actually used to be owned by Walmart, a British one, and they sold it to investors. And she was she's quite a romantic in terms of if people were just nice to each other in the shop, there wouldn't be any problems. But there are. And so the problem she was talking about was, bad managers and all that kind of stuff. And then you create this huge employee need that we've got in the world where, I need a day off because it's my dog's birthday is the running joke, isn't it? I mean, they want days off for everything because you go in, it's a bit like nobody really wants to be at work. And so when the two of them were getting into it in the kitchen, and you get the contractor speech, which is, if they were contractors, this problem goes away. This nanny state thing of the big companies, that how many days off, how many other things, because at the end of the day, and it's relevant to your key marketplace, Netty, if you don't protect the business, the goose, there are no golden eggs. But the world at the moment really is doing, I'm shifting my British analogies here, it is more soup, Mr. Bumble. It's asking for stuff, but it's not done anything to get it. It didn't, you can't reap if you don't sow, and all of those old sort of fashioned things are around. Aren't they?
Yeah. And I think it ties in as well, Bill, with what you're saying, and Mark, with the founder of the business looking after themselves. A bit of self-care. Self-care is really important because you're not in it for the short sprint. You're in it for the long haul. And I really feel that it's so easy, and having experienced this, I mean, I've got an amazing capacity for tenacity, energy, staying up late if I need to complete something. But sometimes I get to the other end and think, that was a bit of a marathon, and I really push myself there because I'm trying to do too many things. And if I think if you look after yourself and you really focus on the things that are necessary, that then takes away some of that stress. And I do think a lot of business owners, myself included, don't think about themselves enough and take care of themselves in the process.
Right. Everybody's like, oh, I want to be happy and this, that, and the other. Fuck that. I want to make money, but you could say, you could keep a running database of these are the things that you've created, Mr. Contractor. All right. And you work out how much you're spending on marketing and your overhead and everything else. And it's like, based on all the expense that I'm going through to sell your shit, then you're going to get 20, 30%. Of everything of yours that sells. And now you don't have someone taking 50% of your business. You say, fuck it, give me 20 more contractors. And now you're scalable.
Yeah.
Quick. And it didn't cost you any extra money to scale.
Yeah. I feel like I need to sit down with you.
Netty, that's one of the key pieces to this, isn't it? Because, we joke about, the hat is the symbol of the cowboy and what people think of as that stereotype. And obviously, talking like he's not on the call, Bill's a lot more than that. But he'll play to that gallery. But the whole principle is this piece about really being able to get to it. Because if people are, Bill will call them contractors or whatever the collaboration is, there's actually less conflict in that type of relationship than there is in the existing employee one, because the employees are going, oh, I need more, and you're not nice to me, and then we're going to have minimum wage of $50 but you're going to you're back to the goose again, aren't you? The business owners can't afford to keep paying for the lifestyle of people who are not producing enough for what they're being forced to based on the overhead. So whereas Bill can play that cowboy conflict-y, put them up. In reality, what he's putting out there is a much lower conflict way of dealing with it because it's clear from day one. You think of the work you and I did, and other people too, with your previous partner in this. That got nasty at the end, didn't it? Because it wasn't sorted out right up front, which in Bill's terms is his phase 0, scope. if it's done during that period, your life would have been so much, and the business would be further forward.
There's no doubt in my mind. Yeah, absolutely.
It's no different than people working remotely today as web designers or whatever. Well, I need to take off. My mom's like, fine, fucking take off. Your date doesn't change. You don't deliver, you don't get paid. So I don't care. Go have a beer. It's like, but you don't deliver, you don't get paid. End of story.
I like the whole idea of the contracting thing. That's a really, really clever idea, and something that doesn't tie you into things. It's much more clean cut, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
it
being
really
a bit British about it, Netty, for our palate, it feels a bit harsh, doesn't it? It feels for our palate, the way, and I've been in business a long time, but I'm a pussy compared to him on this, and I've had to make those decisions too. But it's the clarity, really. Whatever culture you're from, it's I agree to do this, you agree to do that, and in that example he just gave, I've got I want my dog's birthday day off. So in his terms, you got take as many days off as you want, but you're still due to deliver on this day, and that's going to decide either total payment or part payment. So there's no argument. There's no hierarchy. So what feels a bit, it's a bit. My mother would say when I was young, when I worked for American Express, it's an American company, Mark, that, you have to produce results. And I go, Mother, I think it's implied in the job. I think I've got to produce results. But we really do get a bit funny about this thing. Yeah, I think we're all meant to get results done if somebody else is going to pay for that. But we do try to fudge this. And if it's wired into a business from day one, wow. You lived that. The first year and a half of your business.
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Project Victories was originally called the Volpe Consortium. So I had it as the Volpe Consortium. And then, of course, most people didn't know what a fucking consortium was. So they didn't realize it was Latin for group, right? And that was the whole concept. This team might need these guys. This team over here might need some other guys. And so everything was a different project, and everybody had their role, and you rolled it out like that, and everyone got their piece of the pie, and so that's how it was originally set up. But it was a tough message to get across. Of course, it had my name all over it, much harder to sell later on down the road. So then it just became Project Victories, of course, which is much easier for people to understand. But that was the original concept, is that if I need one of these, I get one of these. If I need one of these, I get one of these. I've told Mark before, in the HP Compaq merger, HP was a bunch of pocket protector little fuckers. And Compaq was, was a bunch of cowboys with hats, new vice president to come in, we give him a hat. And so, so they had hats, and we were walking around with mud on our boots and beer in our fridge in the office. The original tandem CEO had one shirt tail in, one shirt tail out, so I could pop the top on a beer walking down to the next meeting. And HP came in and tried to shit all over the culture. So all of the top dogs said, fuck this, we're out of here. But we didn't go to another company. We all went independent because we knew each other. And so someone got a project. They're like, yeah, I know a guy who does that. Yeah, I know a guy who does that. And then we come back together for that project and handled it that way.
Yeah.
But that's what we did with it. And it was really, itemized bite-sized shit. And we'd already gone through projects in the corporate world together. And it's like, what are we going to scope out here? And we'd start at phase 0, and roll through it. But once you had the process down, especially with a bunch of other guys who had the process down, it's cookie cutter. You were just, on, boom, 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 go.
Yeah.
That
sounds like a very well-oiled machine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We had Ericsson once came in and asked for a switch, $1 billion project. Hadn't been designed before. We only had a white paper on what they needed. And because our team had worked together so much, we went from paper to product. And we were in America. We were in Texas at the time. We went from paper to product, delivering the product in Scotland within 9 months. Boom, done. Cell phone switch. Well, we could do that. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew how the other person acted.
So you're talking about something that actually is really super efficient as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what's the BizUnLearned point in here? Because this to me is, from afar, Bill, the stuff about, if you don't launch a rocket, if you don't get the rocket to the launch pad and launch it properly, it's nigh on impossible for it to hit its mission. So there's all that launch stuff in this part of the conversation, isn't there? But absolutely. I'm still not sure, Netty, if we wound back the clock 4 or 5 years, or even if you then bring it up to what most people know today. So they're going to go into business. They're still going to make the 50-50 mistake if they go into a partner. Whether they know the partner enough, but if they're talking to me, I'm going to go into that subject straight away. But the bit that was easy when I first met Bill, because I'd been around a lot of project managers before, and Bill was just a lot more on it than some of my English buddies, which just suited my style on that basis. But the message was the same. But there is something in it, whether it's from you, the business owner, or from you, Bill, as the experienced project manager, we kind of the business world, are still pretty much encouraging, enabling, whatever, business owners to set up businesses that the stats say 82% pretty much are going to be gone in less than 5 years. But we've got all the tools in the world. We've got all these skills. We've got all these universities. So there's still the Apollo 13 fault hardwired in there, isn't it? So how do we address that? That's the fundamental business unlearned point that we're touching on in this piece of the call.
Yeah. I also think there's a situation where I think in my naivety as well is that you think, right, in the UK, Bill, you think there's going to be a lot of grants and support. You can get a bank loan, you can get all sorts of things to help, and it's just non-existent. It's non-existent. Right. It really is. So I think there's a little bit of culture, talking about culture in the business world, where, like I say, there's an expectation from a place of naivety, but also there's a culture here where there isn't a lot of support for entrepreneurs and small businesses. And, once you do get this idea off the ground and you want to keep it going, you've got to know how to keep it going. You've got to find ways. You've got to be tenacious. You've got to be smart to keep it going, because there's very little support. There really isn't anything. So that is another sort of, from a culture's perspective, I think, and especially the way the world is now, you've got to find other ways. You've got to find other ways to support your business and be smart.
Sure. I mean, Mark and I have talked about it a lot. I've sat in on a number of these venture capital calls where people are pitching their ideas, and it's always the engineer or somebody who's pitching it, right? And the VC is like, great, who runs the fucking business? It's like, good idea, I like it, but who runs the fucking business? How am I going to get my money back?
Yeah.
Because just because you got a great idea doesn't mean shit. I need to know I'm going to get my money back. And so, we're starting to look at the fact that they need to say, I'm going to give you money, but you're going to hire these guys to make sure I get my money back. Okay? Because just because you got a good idea doesn't mean shit's going to happen. Yeah. You're going to hire these guys so I get my money back. And then, then your success rate goes up tenfold. So that's a huge thing, because like we've already said, there's plenty of ideas, but execution is where it's at. Yeah. And being able to turn on a dime is huge too.
And having experts that can help, genuinely help, because there are so many people out there who promise all kinds of stuff. We can help.
Oh, they do, yeah.
Yeah, we can help with your marketing, we can help with your SEO, we can help with your social media, and we can guarantee these results. And we've kissed so many frogs.
Right.
There wasn't many princes.
No, we wouldn't be where we are if I'd kissed a prince. Put it that way.
So Netty, before we get to that wrap-up zone, we can't leave this call without just a few minutes on the subject matter of your business around the eco and green and stuff, because it's useful. Bill can give us a very honest reaction from the people he's been around, and he can speak from that audience, can't he? That sort of mentality. But and I've known you over a few years now, that you are sometimes on a lonely path, where my line is, hey, maybe this green stuff and green energy, certainly because it's linked to energy, as well as all the sustainability and recycling, it can be a dirty word in large parts of the world, whether it's it's meant to be a charity bit, or whether it almost gets associated with politics rather than business. Just speak to that for a little bit in terms of it could be the biggest business opportunity for the next 2 generations, because energy is expensive, and green can bring it down.
Well, it is. And also, just having been on a carbon literacy course that was funded by our local council, I went on that. It was a 2-day course, and it was really interesting to help to make your business sort of more carbon sort of efficient, and look at ways of running your business in a more efficient way, and helping with supporting, a greener planet, basically. And I think a lot of people seem to think that, the sky is falling and it's a bit chicken licking and, oh gosh, it's all doom and gloom. But actually, there's so many simple things you can do within a business to really support, the push to leave our grandchildren and our great grandchildren a better place to live, and our children as well, So simple things like, if you can walk somewhere. Doesn't cost anything. If you can use, packaging that's ethical, use that. If you can work with a UK supply chain and local artisans, so that cuts down your carbon footprint, all of those things. And I actually love the challenge of finding, artisans in the UK to work with, and, speaking with them about producing stuff for us, and, the materials that we use, and the inks that are used to print on fabrics. And there's a whole sort of deep dive in all of that, but it's a phenomenally interesting world. And I found that there's a lot more people who are supporting this now than ever there was 3 or 4 years ago. It's now starting to really grow. People's push towards, leaving the world a better place and not wanting to pollute it in the same way. There's a lot of education around it. And I think there is going to be quite a lot of growth in this area over the next 5 years.
The question is, Netty, does Bill hear this as lily-livered liberalism, or does he hear this as, hey, there could be huge profits in this?
Well, I can. My first reaction is, if I was doing anything like eco, I would piggyback on the efforts of Elon Musk with electric cars. I would piggyback on solar power. Chile, for example, down here because we get the Andes Mountains, they've got enough solar panels up now that the electricity in the country is free. But things like that, I would piggyback on those types of things for sure, which would make making people understand much easier. Now, what is the lion's share of what you're doing? You're taking this garbage and you're creating things with it. Is that ultimately your primary focus right now?
We're working with a supplier who takes the ghost nets that we collect on the beach and making bracelets from that. So that's one of our suppliers. And then we've got other people that we work with to produce other products for us in an ethical and sustainable way. So, for example, we've got products made from metal, and all the pieces that are cut out of the metal then go back to be recycled. So looking at the whole process of each of the products from cradle to grave. So yeah, And I mean, there's a lot to be said for, there's geoengineering as well, and obviously who our energy supplier is, who's the energy supplier in our store. They're green supplier, and looking at sort of using things in your business that are from our hosting provider for our website is a green hosting provider, and just sort of looking at different ways to do that within your business. And just keeping it all sort of as close to those ethical values as possible.
Well, certainly one of your challenges are the fucking idiots of the world, like Ocasio-Cortez and fucking America, who introduced a green bill, which was basically going to eliminate planes and everything else, and the other people in Congress and the Senate just tore her up. I mean, she didn't even vote for her own fucking bill. She looked like such an idiot. But that's what happens when you take a bartender who only needs 14,000 votes to get a seat and, and put her in Congress. Okay. So she ends up spending more time on YouTube showing how to put on her makeup than actually coming up with legitimate ideas. And so this is definitely a challenge, for your project. But if you look at stakeholder management and the risks involved, because she gets a lot of media attention and people just think, who the hell is this moron? And so then they obviously just associate everything with that green bill she tried to introduce. But if I were to talk about it from a marketing standpoint, I'd leverage everything that's already been accepted. Electric cars have been accepted. But the the big fucking thing is the electric stations where you charge up your car are run by gas fucking generators. Okay, so anybody with any kind of engineering degree is going, fucking get it, okay, right? and so those are major challenges for the people who think it all the way through. A lot of people don't think things through anymore. There was once a politician running for some office, and he asked his assistants, "What do you think?" And she's like, and the assistant was like, "I think every thinking person is going to vote for you." And he goes, "That's not enough. I need a majority."
Yeah. But that's the stepping stones that we've got to do, Netty, isn't it? Because you can't get people to this in one fell swoop. And Bill's point about, piggybacking is a well-worn business adage. And if we can take the principles out through already accepted, it's almost the old example of Ford doesn't launch a new body with a new engine. It only launches something proven with something new. So all of this is a new direction, but we've got to look for those stepping stones inside the already accepted bit, haven't we? At which point, we are inside our 5 minutes, so somebody's got to wrap it up. The Englishman has his hat on.
I'm going to wear a hat. I've got a pink Detroit hat, and I should have put it on.
I will add to what Mark just said there. It's like, yeah, that's what Ford does. But it was another thing that they did also, all auto manufacturers, is that in these auto shows, they would show you prototypes of what they wanted to introduce 5 years down the road to see what the reaction was. It's no different than Hollywood propaganda, where, there was a never black president in the White House until there was a black president in the movies. They try and get you ready for these types of things. And so that is something that you might want to start taking time to implement too, to get people ready for an idea down the road. That whole 6 month, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan type of thing. And that is certainly a factor. They try to prep people in that way. It's sort of like if I ended up in Washington, D.C. again, never really tell Congress exactly what you want to tell them at that moment. You just kind of give them a hint. And then 6 months later, you'll tell them what's really going on. But yeah, it's just preparation.
It is, and I just think that with Budeful, what we'd like to do, just to wrap up from my perspective, and a Budeful perspective, is the ability to walk into a retail store and still have really lovely items that have a luxury feel without the compromise of it being from a sweatshop or having been produced in an unethical way. So you can still have really lovely things like, our jewelry is made from British recycled silver, but it still looks like Tiffany. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So having all of those things that underpin what we do, you can still have gorgeous things, but they really tick that green.
Well, that one's a little bit of Budeful every day, isn't it, Netty?
Well, isn't it just? Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
And that's the goal.
So, Bill, take us out.
It's a big
time. Thank you, Netty.
Well,
fantastic.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you for joining us, of course. Yes. And everyone, we'll have a link for Netty below this podcast, like we always do, so that you can check her out and go and see exactly what she's doing. And we're going to keep bringing you things like this every 2 weeks right now. And maybe we update that and start doing even more. Okay. But remember to like, comment, and share. We love the love. And let's get her done this week.
Thanks, guys. Lovely to meet you.
Thanks, everybody.